I told you months ago they needed a new CEO, and it's finally happened. But you know what? Might be all for nothing, because this roof is on fire. Hello humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer, here reacting to the latest Amico news. Shout out to Tony for getting all that good info. Of course, we're going to analyze it, everything that's going on, from a business perspective, okay? Now guys, I know a lot of Amico investors got really upset at me when I was, criticizing the culture of the company and the skill set of the CEO. And that doesn't mean I don't think he's a nice man. I don't know him. Many of you might know him. I don't know. But I didn't see him possess the skills that a CEO of a company that was raising millions of dollars had, right? And he was good at marketing, good in front of the camera, good at speaking. That's a very different thing, as I told you before, of being the CEO of a company. The CEO has several functions, all of them having to do with the stewardship of the company. But more than anything, their job is to predict the future of the market of the business that they're engaged in, right? I didn't see anything in Tommy's background that, qualified him for that, okay? Again, for all of you investors and Tommy fans, that's not a criticism on him. I'm just looking at his career. There isn't anything here that leads you to believe that this man has a proven track record of being a CEO of this type of company. It's just like if you ask me tomorrow to be a mechanic. I know very little about cars. I know a lot about baking, right? But I don't know, that much about cars. I couldn't fix a transmission. And just because I love cars doesn't mean that I'm going to be a good mechanic. But you know what? That's not even the problem with this company. It really isn't. As you can plainly see, they are in over their heads. But let me tell you why that is, okay? When I made the comment a few months ago, or whenever it was that Tony put out that video that they let the registrations lapse, I told you this was a bad stewardship of the company, because somebody that made $25 an hour could have filled out that paperwork, paid off those, registrations. Meaningless stuff, right? And it shows that the company has no discipline. It's the culture of the company, right? But those, people could say there's a few mistakes here, that, and the other, okay? You can make excuses for that. To many of my pro-Amico friends, okay, let me say this. This right here is not something that you could or should defend. When the Franchise Tax Board of California suspends you, it's a big deal, okay? Some of you don't live in California. Some of you do, and you know that the Franchise Tax Board is no joke. It is no joke when you're in business. When they suspend you, it's because you didn't pay taxes or you didn't pay them something. That's the reason they suspend you, right? And that's always a bad idea. What does that mean? That means that the money that was given to them is not being properly handled, in my opinion, right? But it looks like the Franchise Tax Board shares the same opinion because they got suspended, right? That would be my opinion of any business that happened to, right? They're in financial trouble. That's what you would gather. That would be the first impression. Let me say this. This is not financial advice. You guys do whatever you want with your money. If you want to, burn it and keep on investing in television, you go right ahead. That is your right. But what I want to give to my audience out of all of this is to how to analyze businesses and see how early we caught this, right? How early I started pointing these things out. And I took a lot of heat for that, right? But I didn't do it for the purposes of saying I want this company to fail. I said it because these things need to be corrected, and I always gave a solution and what needed to be done. But once you get to the point where this Franchise Tax Board is in your ass, you have major problems, right? Let me put it to you this way. Would I rather have Would I rather take a punch from Mike Tyson or have the franchise tax board on my ass? Let me tell you this. I would rather take the punch from Mike Tyson because at least I could sue his ass afterwards. There isn't anything that's going to happen from the franchise tax board except you will pay them. One way or another, you will pay the state of California. They do not fuck around, period. Right? And it's not a position you want to put yourself into in any sort of form. You just don't want to mess around. You think the IRS is bad? The Franchise Tax Board of California is even worse. Let me tell you, I've done business in California, and that is the one entity that you just know. You want no part of them. Oh, look at that. Oh, let me show you this. Shimigami Tensei. Look at that. Oh, that nocturne. Oh, man, I'm looking dapper today, I gotta say. But anyway, guys, this is terrible news. If you're a fan of Intellivision, it's horrible news. If you're somebody that wanted this company to succeed long term, it's very horrible news. Now they have a new CEO. Hopefully he can turn the ship around. You know, whatever was done was bad enough that this guy had to step in. You know, at some point the people that put the most amount of money have to say, we got to stop the bleeding. We got to stop the bleeding. Of all I can say about the previous leadership of the company is that it was undisciplined and disorganized, right? At best. It might have been a very great place to work at, but terrible for business, terrible for making money. And that is, at its core, the purpose of any business. You need to make money. When you're, missing payments, when you're not registering stuff, you're spending capital of investors that have trusted you with their money, and you're blowing it. You're blowing it, right? So that shows you right there that you have a problem. Now, what could you do? What could you do? You're an investor out there, maybe you invested 10 grand, 20 grand, whatever. What could you do? Well, let me tell you this, not much. There isn't much you can do. These are limited liability companies, and the contracts you entered are just albatrosses. They're terrible, just as bad as the contract that Intellivision entered to, fundraising. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just, wow. I mean, how could you do this? I don't think any lawyer would advise you to sign those kind of contracts. You would have to do it out of desperation, number one, or number two, maybe you had some sort of way of knowing that you would make more than the money that, that you were raising at some point, and you were going to be able to afford a 25% hit on your profits. I mean, it's just nuts. It's just nuts. But what could you do? Let me tell you this. I can tell you what I would do and most CEOs that I know would do. Well, as a new CEO, you would have to assess the situation, and one of those things is actually listening to the detractors, see where your press went wrong. Places, let's say like Kotaku or Ars Technica, okay, those are things that you can chalk up to the press. Maybe it was your competition, yada, yada, yada. Where it gets more complicated is when you get YouTubers, whether you like them or not. The fact is that when they put up a point regarding the Amico or Intellivision, they usually put it behind facts, whether it's Genobi, the Geek Getaway, the CU podcast. They have something tangible to criticize because, of all the things that were said by the prior CEO, right? They usually don't lay out claims without evidence. Whatever's subjective is subjective, right? But, say Genovi's last video, he laid everything out with evidence. When you talk about the Geek Getaway, I mean, he'll find things that people aren't even looking for yet, right? And the effect that Pat and Ian have in the CU podcast is that they disseminate bad news really quickly because they have a large audience. That is what you're fighting against. And how are you going to correct that? Well, you need to take a different direction. And that would be, unfortunately, to bankrupt the company, right? If they're in the dire straits where you can't pay your taxes, that's exactly what I would do. Now, Why would I do that? Well, because now you have a new LLC, right? And if, I'm speculating, guys. This is just my opinion, right? I would do exactly that. I would form a corporation in Delaware, incorporate over there with a new name, maybe a couple of different players, maybe some new money, right? I would bankrupt the old company, sell the assets. The assets are worth anything, which is really the software. Sell it to this new company and liquidate the old one. And keep on going with the new company, and that way you can get out of those horrible, horrible contracts that, it's not going to be free, but it's going to be a lot easier if you bankrupt the company, and then you start anew, right? You can take a different direction, you can do several type of things. But out of Intellivision, the worth of the company is really in the software. It's really in the names, right? And you can do a profitable business of software, right? Software is passive income. You don't have to get into hardware. You can make great games. You can make all the games that you have planned. You can make them for Steam. You can make a controller if you want. Have it made in China. And, maybe even improve it, and forget about the console and just make a controller. Now, what does that mean to us as collectors, right? As Intellivision fans? Well, if this thing goes south, the games that we ordered just became a lot more valuable, let me tell you that. Because not that many sold, and, and they might never be activated, right? So, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they can find a way around it, right? But I'm not going to sit here and paint a pretty picture for you guys, especially if, like me, you're an Intellivision fan that you were looking forward to buying these games. Guys, this is bad news. If the franchise tax board suspends you, it could be for many reasons. You didn't pay the taxes, you weren't paying your sales taxes. It could, none of the reasons for getting suspended are good. You can go look them up. But the one thing I can tell you is those kind of hits you usually don't come back from, because now this is going to make the press. Right? I mean, if you didn't have enough bad press already, right? This is it. This might be the reason why, he got pushed out. If I had $2, $5, $6, $7 million invested in this company and he's not doing what he's, proposing on doing, and you're losing money, and now you have the franchise tax board on you, somebody's got to step in and try to right the ship if they can. And at this point, I don't know, because we don't even know what's owed. Unfortunately for them, a lot of this is going to become public, right? So we're really going to know what's going on. I'm sure Tony's going to know before all of us. But from a business point of view, right, and as a Intellivision fan, it's terrible news, guys. It really is. It's disappointing.
New videos every Monday and Sunday. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Gen X Gamer. Remember to like and subscribe, click that notification bell, and remember, never ever be afraid to be happy. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.